Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Let's Talk ETC. I have Anthony with me, Piskel, Lusardi, and Kevin Lord and of IOHK, and they're going to discuss the latest ETC news. So welcome to both of you.
Hey, Christian. Thanks for having us.
Hey, Christian.
All right, so you guys pick who wants to go first. So maybe Kevin, why don't you enlighten us? What is news that we should know about? Pick the first thing you want to talk about.
Sure. Do you guys catch Yaz's article on quantifying immutability?
I saw it. Why don't you give us the little summary of it?
Okay, so essentially he quantified a bunch of different metrics that sort of signify the health or the health of different networks. Looks like he looked at Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ethereum Classic, and he checked out. Yeah, he did a lot of research. This is really good research. Anthony, you got anything to add about that?
Yeah, no, it's really great. I hadn't seen anybody try and because whenever I would talk about immutability, I'd say immutability of state and leave it at that. But other people would interpret immutability differently, and as network rules and a variety of other things. And I guess they're partly right. That there are other things that you expect to be immutable or very hard to change. And so it was just very interesting to see Yaz quantify this, or attempt to quantify this type of change along a variety of different dimensions, so you can get an idea of exactly how much of it is changed, and then you could figure out the when and why. But if you could quantify it for all the major blockchains, you have a really interesting way to compare them at a very basic level. And yeah, I just think that's really cool. I also like the fact that if you violate immutability on this chart that he has, which is a nice little circle matrix type chart, the longer that violation lasts, the lower you score on that measure. So you don't actually, if you violate immutability on one of the metrics that he's identified, it's saying that you don't become more immutable over time. Like that violation is less likely to change. It's saying that your network becomes less immutable over time along that dimension. Obviously, immutability is a binary, and he's been very clear on that throughout the entire article. So that's not to mislead on exactly whether something is immutable or not. It either is or isn't. There's nothing in between. But one of the things is, it's everything that anybody ever does happens over time. So that time variable in there is it's important, and it was an interesting take on it. Whereas other people might say the longer that a hard fork, or the longer that a change sits there, the more solid it becomes. But this function actually is saying that no, it becomes less solid, because it's showing the differential in between past states where you follow one set of rules and future states where you follow a different set of rules, and that future state is always increasing. So yeah, I thought it was a really interesting article. I recommend everybody read it. Yaz is at Yazinator on Twitter, and you could also see the article on medium.com/Ethereum-Classic.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is some people do try to make the definition of immutability confusing. They'll poison the waters by saying, like every time we do a security update, we'll see, look, they did a hard fork, it's not immutable. or I've heard trolls say, the 51% attack, they say, that means it's not immutable. And so I wrote an article, I remember a while back, a couple months ago, and trying to pin down what we mean by immutability. And so anyways, some people do try to confuse the issue. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting too, because I also find, I don't know if people are even trying to intentionally confuse it. It's just that to me, immutability is a really hard thing to define. Even though it's very simple to define it, it's either immutable or not. It's either mutated or not mutated, but it's very hard to define where things have to be one way or the other. And it's just interesting too, because people take a variety of different stances.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I liked where he actually shows where the violation of the immutability is, whereas before it's like, well, yeah, it's either immutable or it isn't. But here he breaks it down to show you exactly where that violation is and how it affects the score that he was using. So it's a really, really good article, and I believe he used Google BigQuery for some of his analysis. So that's also something worth mentioning, is that you can query for the Ethereum Classic Network on Google BigQuery, which is a big data analytics tool, which is also interesting in itself.
Yes, we've mentioned that on the show previously. That is a nice tool to be able to do research on the blockchain. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I agree. Yaz actually helped Google putting a lot of that together. So he's probably the biggest user of it at the moment. But yeah, hopefully more people take advantage of the fact that they have all this very good data, especially on a network that's experienced a rather unique set of things.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Kevin, to your point there too. Sorry, what was it? It was. Oh, I forget. It'll come back to me.
Showed violations of immutability rather than just like saying it's immutable or not immutable.
Oh yeah, I agree that it was very helpful to lay out all these different dimensions, because not everybody's always talking about the same thing.
Yeah, and the message tends to get distorted and change definitions, and here you can actually visibly see where the violation is and whether it's hurting the chain or not.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So what else do you got for us?
So it looks like next week Blockchain Week in New York, I believe.
Yep.
Right?
Next week is Hell Week in New York.
Why is it Hell Week? That sounds like a good thing, having a Blockchain Week.
There's
Hell
so
Week
many
locals, right?
conferences.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just silly. Like, I get everybody wants to come together, but the amount of conferences has just reached an enormous amount, and they're just end up so packed that you can't even move.
Okay.
Although that was last time during a bull market, so maybe it's changed a bit since then, or during the cooling off of a market.
Right.
But yeah.
Possibly, but I mean, yeah, there's a lot of, to your point, there's a lot of missed opportunities for engagement, because there's just too many people, and it's there's no way somebody's going to be able to interact with that one person they want to interact with when there's 300 other people interacting with that person already,
right,
or that group already. It's just crazy. I can't imagine what it's like for locals. It's got to be insane.
Yeah.
But so I don't think any group in ETC has anything official planned, but I do know that we have a few people that are going to be going over there for Blockchain Week, or Bitcoin Week, whatever you want to call it. I know Liz from ETC Labs is going to be over there. So yeah, if you see Liz, say hi, talk to her about ETC Labs and Ethereum Classic and why it's the best network around, and it would be really cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Now, speaking of conferences, there's a big one coming up in October, the ETC conference, right?
The best one of the year.
Right. So, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah. So the summit's going to happen in October, I believe. Anthony, do you know the dates exactly, or?
What was it? I used to remember the dates.
Okay, so it's the 3rd and 4th, and it's going to be in beautiful Vancouver, Canada. So right
dress
now,
warm.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely dress warm. But there is a call out right now for speakers. So, speakers are being contacted and confirmed, and the whole event is being organized right now, especially by the ETC Cooperative. And also on the same note as the summit, we've had a lot of people asking us, well, can I pay with ETC or can I pay with cryptocurrency? And the short answer is yes. We've discussed this, and you can pay in ETC if you choose to. Just go ahead and find Bob Summerwell. Bob will make sure that you get your ticket as you hand over your ETC. So
yeah. And yeah, Bob's email is bob@etccooperative.org if you want to email him.
There you go. Perfect. So yeah, just contact Bob and pay ETC. And I'm not sure we're accepting any others, but I think it's only ETC. But the summit's going to be very, very interesting. I'm not too sure if I'm going to be giving a talk, but I think Anthony might be giving a talk. A lot of other people are going to be giving really interesting talks. There's a lot of interesting speakers that are confirmed already, and some interesting ones that are maybe not confirmed yet. Hopefully they will be. Hopefully. But Anthony, don't you plan on speaking out there?
Yeah, I do. I'm not sure exactly what topic I'll be doing yet. Probably giving a kind of state of ETC like I did last year. Mm-hmm. But that could change. I'll definitely be speaking though. Looking forward to it.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's going to be something to definitely show up for. And Vancouver is definitely a little hub for cryptocurrency. So it's going to be a really, really amazing event for sure.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Now, isn't there also some kind of meetup in China that coming up? I heard something about that.
Yep. So there is another meetup. There was a meetup last week or the week before in China. Yaz was actually out there and he spoke. So they're having another meetup, and that one is going to be on May 18th in Hangzhou, China. It looks like Christian Zhu from the ETC Cooperative is going to be out there. And yeah, when we have a little more information, we'll definitely share it. But for now, you see the flyer, and the flyer is giving us all the information we have.
Okay. All right. Very good. So what else is, what other news do we need to pay attention to?
Well, Binance is going to, there's actually a lot going on with Binance right now, but aside from their hack, they're actually going to be adding more Ethereum Classic trading pairs. So they're adding an ETC USDC trading pair, ETC PAX trading pair, and also an ETC TUSD trading pair. So, hey, the more the merrier. That's like the 200 and something trading pair for ETC. So that's just more icing on the cake.
Right, definitely. Okay.
Awesome.
And then also, wasn't the ETC Labs, don't they have their next batch of startups that they're funding?
That's right. The cohort number 2 looks like they're getting ready to get started over there. I can't believe they're already done with the first cohort. That went by really quickly. But there was, I believe, 11 startups that came out of that cohort. You have some startups like Ethernode, which is developing some hardware for Ethereum-based networks and Ethereum Classic, and it's essentially just node hardware, very comparable to the Casa Lightning node that we've been seeing all around crypto Twitter. But this is going to be for Ethereum, specifically Ethereum-based networks.
Yeah, and my understanding is it's going to do a good deal more than Casa node. Mm-hmm. They seem to be working on some interesting, fun things.
Can you elaborate? Maybe people aren't familiar with Casa node.
Yeah. A Casa node is just it's a Bitcoin node, but rather than downloading and running the software yourself on your own computer, you get it shipped over to you from a company called Casa, and then you use the node like you would a Bitcoin node, and you can. I think they support Lightning now, so you can do your own Lightning transactions using that node, and then so you just have this piece of hardware in your house that always lets you, interact with either Bitcoin or the Lightning network.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a really big hit, especially with the developments with Lightning. A lot of people were buying the product till it was sold out, and a lot of people were demanding the product when it was sold out. So it was a really popular product, and hopefully Ethernode can generate that same type of I guess that same type of ethos around their excitement, enthusiasm around their product, because Casa node, that's obviously Bitcoin focused and Lightning focused, but where in the world is a hardware node for Ethereum based networks,
Right.
So this is definitely going to be something exciting for all of Ethereum and Ethereum-based networks, especially for I know me and people at IOHK, because Mantis is going to be on there, as well as I believe Parity, as the two preloaded clients that will be on their hardware. So that's something that I thought was really exciting. Was people will finally get to check out Mantis for themselves. Mm-hmm. And see how efficient it is and how well it performs, especially compared to clients like Geth or maybe even Parity.
Right.
Geth for sure.
Yeah. I've had a couple of the people on my show that the ET Labs funded. There was the Ethernode. There was another one for supporting games. That's big industry. And so there's all kinds of interesting projects going on over there. And I even did a class for the developers at one point, an online class, which was fun. And people asked me about the security questions. I was talking, what about quantum computer attacks? Is that something to worry about? The basic, right? What's a Patricia tree? And so, and I believe I was asked. I know what I was asked. I'm going to also kind of teach the second cohort in August, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm happy to keep supporting them and just wish them all the success in the world.
That's really cool. So you basically just broke down blockchain terminology 101 stuff.
Yeah, it was really. I had a syllabus of some basics. I was going to talk about what a hash is, what a Merkle-Patricia tree was. I had a list of things, consensus, but I also allowed a lot of opportunity for them to ask questions on what specifically they were confused about, if anything. And so it was a conversation that we did for an hour. So that was kind of fun.
That's really cool, because I think a lot of startups are obviously going to be filled with a lot of more entrepreneurial focused individuals instead of, obviously blockchain focused people. So that's quite valuable that you're there to show them the ropes.
Right. And it's taken me a long time to learn all the, I still don't know all the details of the technology. So, but I'm happy to pass along what I know.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you did this, through like a conference call, or was it like a
WebEx?
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So you're based out of Texas, right? And they're up in San Francisco. So
right.
That's really cool that you guys can coordinate that and still be valuable.
Right. So
what about PeaceBridge, guys?
Yeah, PeaceBridge is pretty cool. PeaceBridge is, for those who don't know, it was just released as in a version that you could actually use. I think there's still some other things left to be done with it, and obviously with any new software you should only first use it for small amounts until it has a long history of usage, and then you can have some better trust of it. That's just the nature of any beast. But besides that caveat, Peacebridge is really, really cool. It essentially lets you box up ETC or ETH and move it to the other chain. And once you move it there, you can kind of just move it around, trade it, send it however you want. And then you can move it back whenever you need as well. So if you wanted to, I don't know, say use ETC as some collateral in a DAI contract on the Ethereum network, you could do that. There's another option where you could do that too, called WETC. But the place where Peacebridge, provides you some better guarantees is that WETC requires a trusted counterparty to basically sign off on your wrapped ETC, whereas with Peacebridge, you don't need a trusted counterparty. It's much closer to Lightning in that type of way where anybody can, prove or disprove whether or not the funds that you sent to somebody are true or not. So it's really cool. I haven't personally used it myself yet. I've been meaning to, but yeah, it looks really neat, and it's taken quite a good deal of time to design and develop. So there's been a lot of thought put into it, and it's really nice to see. So I encourage everybody to go and check it out. It's got a lot of thought and a lot of engineering behind it, but unfortunately not much marketing. So very few people are aware that it exists. And even though right now it's only ETC and ETH chains, it is based on the EVM, so it could conceivably work on any EVM-based chain.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough noise being made for this development. Like this is a pretty big development coming out of the ecosystem, and this could really change a lot of things for a lot of different opportunities. Could change the game. But would this potentially open the door for ETC to be used as collateral for a DAI contract or a CDF?
Yeah, it can definitely open those doors. I don't know how DAI works right now with collateral, but I'd imagine you can add it because they are looking at multi-collateral DAIs from what I've last read. But,
I've seen some pieces about multi-collateral or multi-collateralization. And I think I have a feeling that Peacebridge would only aid in that. I don't know how it would hinder it, or maybe it would help. But that's one option, one opportunity I was thinking about. But it's a really, really big development coming out of ETC, and the cooperative helped set this up. Anthony was one of the people who helped set this up and kicked it off. I believe was it at EdCon?
It was at EdCon. It was kicked off both by ETC Cooperative and Ethereum Foundation. They each provided funding 50%. So credit where credit's due. And Peacebridge is a continuation of an earlier project called Peace Relay that was developed by Kyber Network. And the final version of Peacebridge was developed by several people at Akomba Labs, including Lu Ying Tong, who is the one who's been publishing the articles, and she's been what I would call the primary project lead. So, credit to everybody there, and also to Virgil Griffith, who helped put this together too at the start on Ethereum Foundation side.
Most definitely, credit where credit is due. Doesn't this go back to? Wasn't there a BTC relay that they created back in the day?
Yeah, there's a BTC relay also. They actually have a Dogecoin relay, which is funny. But yeah, one of the things about the BTC relay, or at least I know especially about the Dogecoin relay, but I'm pretty sure it's the same for both, is there is somewhat of a trusted setup in that you have to kind of take a bunch of Bitcoin blocks and wrap them up in a special way and then broadcast them to the network. Whereas this is, doesn't have that counterparty risk in between. Any individual can look at both chains and assure themselves that they haven't been double spent when it comes to, or that they haven't been given fake ETC or fake Ethereum.
Okay.
So you get a lot more guarantees and a lot more self-sovereignty, which I think is very, very important. You don't have to trust middlemen for Peace Bridge.
Yeah, that's definitely added for sure.
So these are all just ways to kind of make it easier to move between chains, right, in crypto space, if people want to do that, if that was something that was important to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. Now, why don't we say something, or Kevin, can you or Anthony say something about the Atlantis hard fork? I've talked about it a little bit in the past, but any updates or anything you want to say about that?
Nothing from my side, mostly because I haven't kept up with the upcoming hard forks. I mean, I know they're adding some opcodes to support Byzantium, but I'm not sure where one hard fork ends and the other one begins, unfortunately, because I haven't looked yet.
I think you said the main thing. It was to support some Ethereum opcodes for interoperability. I think, and a lot of people were looking forward to that. I think that's the biggest. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but I think that's the main take-home message from the Atlantis hard fork.
I believe so. Yeah, integrating the Byzantium and I believe the Constantinople EIPs into ETC.
Oh yeah,
is that right, Anthony?
Yeah, that sounds right. Forgot
Okay.
Constantinople.
Yeah, I mean, there's one piece in the ECIP, 1054. That's that some people have been bringing up about state tree clearing, which was I believe EIP 160, I think it was. I don't even know if it's that. 161. So yeah, state tree clearing. Apparently, there was a lot of spamming going on at one point. Created a bunch of spam accounts with nothing in them, and this EIP would erase those accounts. And that's something that some people have been bringing up about whether or not it's okay to do, whether or not it's a violation of immutability on some levels. And yeah, the argument was that it increases performance and that it would increase, it would increase performance and on the chain, make it more healthy and less bloated. But the other side to that is, well, it's going to violate immutability. I don't know if you guys
you
want
can't
to
do that
on that a little bit, because it's something.
Is it in one of the planned hard forks? Is it in that second one?
It's in Atlantis.
Oh, okay. Is Atlantis the first one coming up or the second one?
I believe it's the first, because there's a Garta, and I think that was the second one proposed. So ECIP 1054, that's the one with this EIP in it, 161. I'm reading it right now. It says this EIP is focused on debloating blockchain state size by removing empty accounts, providing optimizations such as faster sync times. And it's really like, but at what cost? Do we really want to shoot ourselves in the foot, so to speak? But I'm not a developer, and I have no qualification to talk about these types of developments. But from my perspective, it's a touchy subject. I mean,
just a little bit of history. So Ethereum suffered a denial of service attack way back. Somebody figured out that they were underpricing certain operations. And so a hacker figured out that he could really cheaply create all of these spam accounts. And I assume the plan was to short Ethereum while doing it. And I think that was the genesis of all of these spam accounts that don't really do anything. And that's what caused the blow.
Yeah. And there's like that argument that, they're spam accounts. There's no, value to them. So it doesn't violate anything, but it's still, in my mind, for some reason, it doesn't seem okay.
I'm not sure if this, I just read over EIP 161 briefly, and I think, I don't think that this is any sort of hard fork that actually changes the representation of the network.
Okay.
Was it?
It's just an optimization because it avoids the local database having all of this useless gunk in it. So the blockchain is still untouched, and you could still recreate all the gunk if for some reason you wanted to.
That makes more sense to me. So yeah, I mean, I didn't read it fully, but I think that's I think you're right there, Christian.
Yeah. All right. So, and then there was, I think there was something about Sputnik VM. Kevin, did you want to say something about that?
Yeah. So basically, ETC Labs Core came out with a new update to Sputnik VM. They have gone ahead and named this update EVM RS because I guess Sputnik is written in Rust, so maybe they want to touch on that and call it EVM RS. Sputnik's a really outstanding virtual machine. From what I remember, there was a lot of positive feedback from the Ethereum side about Sputnik VM. It was developed by Wei Tang, who is, I believe, he's an Ethereum developer, and he also does ETC development, and he's had several different hats.
But he was on ETC Dev for a while. I mean, he was on ETC Dev for a while. Then he was on ETC Labs. So yeah, definitely an asset for sure. But this is the virtual machine that makes ETC different from every other Ethereum-based network. Is the fact that this is what we mean when we say that Ethereum Classic is IoT optimized or Internet of Things optimized. Like this is very much focused for like low power devices and things of that nature. Have you guys
a lean and mean virtual machine? Very small footprint, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, they've gone ahead and nicknamed it EVM RS. Still a fan of Sputnik. But it looks like they're continuing to develop with it. ETC Labs Core came out with their update like a few weeks ago, and they're continuing developing on a lot of where ETC Dev left off. They are going to be, obviously changing some of the names and the project names and whatever they're developing on. But they're really picking up the slack. So. Hats off to the ETC Labs Core team for sure.
Yeah, if there was any confusion about what VM Sputnik was, now it's the new name makes it obvious that it's Ethereum-based virtual machine. I don't know why they changed the name, but I do know that at least in America, Sputnik is not seen as a positive thing, right? So maybe that's why they wanted to not remember that incident in American history.
Maybe. That could definitely be one thing. One of the factors, the motivational factors for the name change. But it's a name change for sure. It's not a nickname. They changed the name to EVM RS. But hey, if they're going to keep developing on it, more power to them.
Right. Right. Yeah, good. Anything else? I think we've covered most of the news that I can think of. Did we miss anything? Anthony or Kevin?
No, that's all good for me. Last thing I'd leave with is reorgs are always possible, and saying they're impossible on a proof of work blockchain is insane. But right. I've been seeing a lot of that lately. They may be improbable, they may be difficult, they may be very hard to pull off, they may be technologically challenging, they may have no marketplace at present time, but the idea that they're absolutely impossible is crazy, and saying that it is can end up being very bad for cryptocurrencies long term, because then people assume it's impossible, find out it's possible, and now they're all worried that they can't trust it, when in fact they just didn't have the right trust model of how you trust a proof of work cryptocurrency. So hats off to other
Wait, now you have to. Can you give us a quick elaboration on what you mean by a reorg?
Just that you can mine a smaller chain so that it's longer than the chain that everybody's seeing at the moment. And through doing that, you can create, a double spend transaction or that type of thing.
So of course, and then
Yeah.
the solution there is to just wait for more confirmations. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for the most part, it's way more confirmations is one of the easiest things you can do. There's other ways you can take to protect yourselves, but a very trivial way is to wait enough confirmations for whatever value it is that you've been sent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Definitely. Even during the attack in January, if the exchanges had just waited, if the affected exchanges would have just waited even 100 confirmations, they would have been okay and they would have been safe, because the largest reorg, I believe, was only 100 blocks deep.
It was about 120, I think, was the largest of them. But yeah, no, waiting more confirmations helps. It just makes it more expensive to attack you. Like, do that. Make the upfront costs higher.
Exactly.
In theory, the attacker is going to then be able to, subsidize themselves with block rewards, and the attack's free as long as it's successful. And it's like, sort of, sometimes it's free if it's successful. Other times it's still a lot of risk and it's still expensive, and you don't truly know for sure whether or not you're going to be able to pull it off, because, even after that, you have to, assuming you're buying your electricity, you're going to have to pay for it. And even if you're paying for it in Bitcoin, you're going to kind of de-anonymize yourself there and in a million other ways. So these things aren't as easy to pull off as people say they are. And so they end up only being pulled off in situations where it's very, very easy. But, just because it's improbable or...
But then again, you had somebody with like major influence in the cryptocurrency space and also a ton of Bitcoin. So in theory, do you think he could have pulled off coordinating and organizing and a reorg?
Oh, for CZ? No, absolutely not. Not in present day, because the software isn't written and the marketplace doesn't exist. But the idea that, miners could talk to each other and say, hey, let's write some software for the next, in case this ever happens again, and we can do it there. Like, any rationally self-interested, profit-driven person might want to do it, especially if they're on the side of, especially if they're unlikely to, end up in trouble for doing it.
For sure.
Those are all things that they'd have to then talk about. Like, is this legal? Is this illegal? Is this something that we could face repercussions for from other people? Like, if somebody spends this money somewhere else and then we end up defrauding everybody who's received it, even though they weren't part of the attack, like, what happens there? There's a lot of crazy questions to ask, and definitely a lot of difficulty with it. But I don't like the idea that it's impossible, and I think that that's just a big negative, that you need to plan for these tail risk black swan type of events, and properly educate people so that they get reduced in occurrence, and so that when they do happen, it's not the end of the world, because a reorg, even a deep reorg, is not the end of the world.
Right.
There's very little normally impacted by it. And for the most part, the blockchain continues just fine. And if you say that this is going to mean Bitcoin fails entirely and then therefore it can happen, like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
And it also happened on the social layer, and then they're, going to run to the protocol layer to try to reorg it. And it's like, no, look at all the things that have happened in the past with, obviously, Mt. Gox and Bitfinex. Where was the reorg for those affected clients? That's just inconceivable that they would really, really consider that enough to start posting things on Twitter. And it was insane. I couldn't believe they were. I thought it was a joke at first, but it was very unsettling to learn that nope, it was something they were legitimately considering.
Well, it's easy to be idealistic, and then but when your money's involved, all of a sudden it's not so easy to be idealistic.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, when once they're the ones affected, then let's reorg the chain. Well, is that even possible? So Anthony, are you arguing that reorgs are impossible on Bitcoin, or that they're
possible?
That they are possible.
They're just highly improbable.
Mm-hmm.
They're just not very likely to happen, and at this present time, I don't think that you would be able to do it. But
I don't think there would be any way.
That's largely a question of there's no coordination and there's no software to do it in a reasonable way. I think those are two things that, could end up at some point in the future being true, that there is software and there is a way to coordinate. And that's just something that should be planned for now rather than responded to after it happens.
Like there's software already available, and then once another black swan event happens, then hey, just go ahead and pick up that software. And okay, yeah, I could see that being an issue for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing is like when you talk about this too, it's also, you've got to inform people that there are much better ways to manage these risks and manage thefts than considering reorging a blockchain and spending millions, if not tens or hundreds of millions of dollars to do so. Because that's literally what it starts to cost even after just a couple days. But one of the things that they need to do is like you can just do manual requirements of large withdrawals in any given block or over any given period of blocks. And, make sure that if it somehow fails, that you have replaced by fee ready to go. Any transaction that's sent out by Binance should be immediately replaced by feed if it's RBF'd, if it's like just way too high and there hasn't been prior given approval. And this should be, machines that just don't talk to the network. There's a lot of better mitigations than planning for a massive reorg. That's like the nuclear option. But yeah.
Right. It seems like the worst option, honestly. It's like
it's the worst option.
Whole network with you just because your exchange or your store got hacked.
Right.
Well, sort of. If you're like if you're trying to do what, for lack of better words, is like a responsible reorg, you're just excluding the transaction where you got double spent. You're not excluding everybody else's transactions. Everybody else's transactions, you be a good citizen and you put them back in the proper order, and then you disrupt as few things as possible, and then you've not upset people. There are still other places where you can upset people because you could reclaim Bitcoin that the attackers already spent, and legitimate parties have now lost money because the attacker just happened to give them money and they had no idea they were the attacker. Yeah. But yeah, it's still a nuclear option, and I just think it's silly to say it's impossible when it's just really improbable.
Right.
So you think it's really important to make that distinction, because there's some people on Twitter saying it's absolutely ludicrous that they would even suggest that because it's impossible, but it's not. It's just very, very improbable and unlikely.
And expensive.
Yeah. And expensive. It's very expensive. If you deposited something on Bitcoin last year, the cost for it to be reverted now is literally in the billions of dollars. At present time, every 3 to 4 months, you add a good billion and a third dollars worth of work to the Bitcoin blockchain. Like, that is a lot of money guaranteeing your deposits. At least, based on present hardware and all of those other caveats. But it becomes very, very cost prohibitive very fast, which is great. And just people need to understand that. In a block or two, it's not very cost prohibitive, but after, 1,000 blocks over the course of 10 days, it's far, far more prohibitive.
So pretty much in theory, yes, but in practice, no.
Right.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right. So, Kevin, do you have any last words before we close? Anything
Just that we're going to be having some more talks about ECIP 1054. We had a community-wide discussion, I believe, a month ago on the Atlantic hard fork, and we had, I think, around 24 individuals participate in the meeting. I think we're going to have another one coming up, and we'll have information obviously distributed on the ETC channels. Also, we have IOHK. We're planning some possible proposals to bring to Ethereum Classic. So definitely be on the lookout for that in the future. Yeah. So that's all from me for sure. I'll pass it to you, Christian.
All right. Yeah, very good. We'll definitely have to have you on a future show to talk about IOHK and kind of what they're doing.
Definitely.
Ethereum Classic and other things. So yes. All right. So thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Kevin, for joining me and enlightening us. And so just best wishes. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too.
You guys.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.